Hey Phantom fans, you're watching Chronicle Chamber. My name is Scott, and today we're talking about The Phantom Number Zero, released by Mad Cave Studios. This was written by Ray Fawkes, with art by Russell Olson, and letters by Taylor Esposito. This issue is a free comic book day release, but don't let that turn you away. It is actually a full 32-page comic, full color. It's beautifully drawn. The colors are very vivid and vibrant. It's also sort of an introduction or teaser to the Phantom character, kind of a reignition or refresh on the character to comic book fans who maybe aren't reading the newspaper strips or dailies and Sunday specials. So this issue, the story itself is kind of a self-contained introductory story. It starts off with the Phantom in his, assumedly, the Skull Cave in a giant library. There are volumes and volumes of books all around him. There's one that says 1536, which, is a very important number, speaks to the original Phantom, and here we are in 2025. There's actually no placement on what year this takes place, but one can assume it's a present day story. It's what kind of the vibe and feel is, especially with the language. But the Phantom is writing in his journal, being very detailed about today's adventure, which feeds into the rest of the book. It's kind of a quick little romp that really just serves to highlight who the Phantom is, what he's about. This tale, it takes place in the jungle. It starts with him tracking down some poachers. He's following their tire tracks, and there's some blood marks, and he's angry that they would disrupt and disturb his jungle to kill beautiful animals that are just looking for peace. And so we see a lot of his environment and surroundings. For Phantom fans, this is nothing new, but for people who aren't familiar with the character, this is a reintroduction. Definitely kind of shows you who he is, how he's different from other costumed heroes that are on the news comics or the comic book stands today. And that's kind of the big deal here is, whereas that first daily strip, where Phantom first appeared way back in 1936, that Phantom story was taking place in New York City in the harbor. This story, in the jungle, really kind of creates that scene and that sense of this is who he is. He's not Batman. He's not Spider-Man. He's not, any other superhero you can think of. The outfit the Phantom was wearing, I do want to highlight, he doesn't have his striped underoos there. This is a straight, solid color. Not sure what that means just yet. We don't get much information on there, but it does sync up with the outfit stylings in Mad Cave Studios' Defenders of the Earth series. This isn't to say they're the same Phantom. It's just something I noticed, that the costumes are very similar. Anyways, the Phantom is tracking these poachers. It leads them to a shack where they are inside the shack. There's a character by the name of Obi, who's kind of the hesitant, friendly, nervous poacher here. He seems to be pressed into service. He's not really part of the other guys who are more grizzled and scary looking here, but he is tasked with skinning the tiger they caught. However, there is a tiger that's on their trail and lurking behind him, and the Phantom has seen this already, and he's going to use it to his advantage. The Phantom we get here is actually kind of an interesting characterization in that there's a lot of very serious monologuing, or I guess journaling we see, where he's kind of going back and forth debating the evilness of these poachers and whether or not he should let the tiger have them or not. But there's also a little bit of humor and jokiness to his character. It creates kind of this interesting characterization where we don't know, how far on the serious spectrum he is versus this subtext of humor. Is it a little more performative, kind of in the vein of a character like Batman, or is this truly how he feels? It's an interesting, idea the writing and the creative team is presenting here, and we'll find out more as this series starts to release with issue number 1, soon after this free comic book day release. But the main point here is that, we're seeing a character who's weighing, the wickedness of other men and trying to decide in his head how he should judge them and how he should proceed. So he goes to the shack. He threatens them kind of from the roof. His big booming voice comes down it doesn't really faze them so much. The leader of the poachers is like, that's a real man. He's on the roof. This isn't, some sort of specter or ghost. There's this little pushback. And so the Phantom gives these poachers a choice. They can drop their weapons and leave, and he will guide them to safety, or they can take their chances with the tiger. Unfortunately, the poachers choose the latter. And that's where we get a lot of the conflict this issue. The art is very cartoony, kind of light and bright. It keeps a little bit of a upbeat attitude because the tones and the theming and even the dialogue is a little darker. There's actually blood on the tiger too, so there's a darker subtext here that's kind of uplifted with this idea of a little more vibrant art here. Something that it's kind of interesting because it seems like it's a little more kid friendly with the coloring and the styling, but at the same time the tone is more older reader adjacent. I would say there's something that like people who are really into like crime stories or jungle adventures would gravitate with, regardless of how old or young they might be. The story from there kind of unfolds as you would expect. The poachers take their chances. They run outside with their weapons. The tiger leaps into action, starts picking them off one by one, and we really centralize around this character of Obi on the roof as he meets the Phantom. And that's kind of where the meat of the themes and the ideas of this story come into play, this characterization of the Phantom, because Phantom actually is stern with Obi at first, but he also cracks a weird joke or two. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of a thing. The Phantom says something at one point, and then he does that thing he points out, and then kind of does like a half laugh after it, and that's your cue that was a joke. But for Phantom fans, this is, it's really more about setting the scene and showing this jungle adventure. We don't get a lot of movement with an overall structure, which I guess you can't really expect because this is a number 0. This is an introductory issue. However, we do see some accoutrement of the Phantom near the end of the issue. When he finishes his journal, he goes out into what we would assume to be the inner sanctum of the Skull Cave. He sees Diana. She's there reading. I can't remember, reading or something. And he goes out to greet the day. It was a long day for him. He finished writing. He's about ready to start a new adventure. And so we have those markers of Diana's already in his life. We don't know if they're married or not. We don't know if they have kids or not. Not quite sure where this takes place. But we at least know that factor is there, that she is present. And as he goes out to greet the day, he looks up into the sky. He sees a plane smoking and on fire that's about to crash, and he is ready to leap into action once more in his Bengalan adventures. So something I should also note here too is the tiger is called a Bengalan tiger. It's not a real tiger, kind of a play off the Bengal tiger, but interesting little motif here. Wanted to point out and highlight. But other than that, it's, for an introductory adventure, for what it's trying to do in terms of re-engage an audience and drive new readers to the Phantom in the United States, it's pretty solid. It has the action beats. It has some beautiful art. There's enough there for older readers to see that it's a book that will be taken serious. Phantom does have a serious tone, when he's talking to the poachers. And hopefully this is the start of something that they'll build upon greatly. The only real issue that I see right now, and maybe that's because I'm a little bit too eager, is that since this is issue number 0, we don't really know where in the timeline this Phantom takes place, what canon he's part of. Is he his own canon? Is he connected to the Defender somehow? None of that is known. And so it's a little bit of a major question mark that gives me pause. But other than that, looking forward to where this goes, because we have the foundation there. All they need to do is build this up and start, telling us a gripping adventure that, keeps drawing us in. As always, if you're looking for more of the Phantom reviews, you can check out chroniclechamber.com. We will have more reviews of this series as it releases, as well as Defenders of the Earth reviews and everything else coming out of Mad Cave Studios that is Phantom forward. Thanks for watching.